You've spelunked into the Matt Cave.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into this week's episode of the Matt Cave. Thank you all so much for spelunking on by. This week, Utah, well, Rice-Eccles Stadium at night is just something different. It is, and people across the country have no idea. They need to learn, and they need to learn quick. But that was fun. That was a really fun one to watch, and I'm sure experience. Other than that, there was not any football. There wasn't even any hockey, really, this past week. And men's basketball is going to be starting up this week, so I'll give a little bit of a preview for the three squads. That would be BYU, Utah, Utah State. What to expect from them this season, and just how far one of them might go in March. So thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much again for going out to the Radio Ronin t-shirt meetup this past weekend. It was so much fun seeing a lot of you, and I really hope my gratitude shone through. I really, really do appreciate all of you. So thank you all so much. Do the usual for me if you could, please. That is rate 5 stars, thumbs up, wherever it is, however you listen. And then share this with just one person that you think might enjoy the program. Just one. While you can put it on your social media pages, share it out and scream it from the mountaintops. That would be great. I just like you to give it to one person that you think would enjoy the program. And that is basically all the announcements I have for you today. So let's dive into it, and let's start with that University of Utah football game against a ranked Cincinnati squad that the national media was way higher on than I ever was. So when it comes to Cincinnati and their schedule was pretty much just as soft as BYU's. When we look at it, their one loss was to Nebraska on the opening weekend. And then they beat such giants as Northwestern State, Bowling Green, Central Florida, Oklahoma State, and Kansas. Wow, that's quite the resume to have them ranked 17th overall. Let me tell you what. Sure, they blew out Oklahoma State and Baylor in back-to-back weeks. That's not saying much of anything. They beat Iowa State at home by 8. So this team I was not very high on. I didn't understand the national media swooning over them. And I'm pretty sure it has to do with the Kelce brothers. I think that's why a lot of the national media was all over them, was because of the Kelce brothers. That's where they went to school. And so they're going to be in the national eye pretty much from now until those guys decide to ever hang up their podcast headset. So that's why I think they were ranked so highly. As they showed against Utah, once they came up against a real team that was not injury-riddled, that had a great coaching staff, they just aren't in the same league. And Utah really showed that. It also helped that it was Rice-Eccles Stadium, and it also helped that it was at night. Utah just plays better at Rice-Eccles Stadium at night. I don't think that's news to any of us here, but that's just the way it is. And so I did say to a few of you I thought Utah was going to lose with Devon Dampier at quarterback, and I'm very happy to report he proved me absolutely wrong. This is one of those instances where I'm happy I'm wrong. He played a wonderful game, 16 of 31, 213 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. That 1 interception, I don't know why you throw that. You're Devon Dampier. Just tuck it and run. Just go. Like, I get it. You don't want to take too many hits. We saw what happened when you did against BYU. Cincinnati's not BYU. You're going to be able to have time to slide, to make some moves. Just don't throw that ball into triple coverage, especially when you have a safety that is pretty good. His dad is a Hall of Famer, so he does know what to look for. But Devon Dampier also ran the ball 14 times, 78 yards, with a long of 14. Wayshawn Parker had himself a game, 17 carries, 104 yards, and a touchdown. And then Bird Ficklin with probably the touchdown of the night, where they were going in to score that final touchdown in the fourth quarter, and Bird just took a shot just across the face, spun around. I'm almost 100% certain he was out cold and his body was just going through the motions to get into the end zone. Because when he got to the sideline, it did not look good for him. He was out cold, but that was the epitome of Utah football right there. That's this game and the Colorado game are Utah football. I don't know. When you get into a rivalry game like BYU Utah, everything goes out the window. People start to change who they think they are when it comes to play calling. Players overplay. They don't wrap up when they tackle. But outside of that game and outside of the Texas Tech game, where it was like a 10 a.m. kickoff for us here in Utah, Utah is looking like who I thought they would be. This team is looking really good. Devon Dampier is keeping the turnovers down for the most part, and he's looking good. Even if he is a little bit hobbled with that ankle injury, he's still looking good. He may not have the same explosiveness that he did in the first 2 weeks, but he's still a threat. And Jason Beck is doing a great job play calling around the injury, and Devon Dampier is still taking off. So this team is really good. I know that's shocking for you to hear that, but when we look at the remaining schedule for the Utes, there's 3 games left. There's Baylor on the road in a sort of revenge game, Kansas State at home in the home finale, and then at Kansas. Utah's going to be favored in every game. Utah is going to run over each and every one of these teams. They just are. The offensive line is just that good. The defense is that sound and structured. Yeah, Utah got burned on a couple of deep throws. Usually Utah's pass rush gets to the quarterback in time, and then on one of those deep throws, Brendan Sorsby just hucked it. He just threw it. He was hoping his guy could run under it. His guy did, and it was a touchdown. Otherwise, Utah played a wonderful game against Cincinnati, and they are going to finish the season with 10 wins. I really do believe that. Baylor, Kansas State, and Kansas, they don't really strike fear into the heart of anybody. And Baylor, Dave Aranda has been on the hot seat for 3 years now. He might be coaching for his job, so that could be a scary one. Kansas State, it's a forgotten year, and then Kansas is reverting to Kansas. They're not who they were a couple of years ago, and Jalen Daniels, the quarterback of Kansas, his development has hit a ceiling, so this team is not that great. So Utah I think will finish at 10-2. They will have 2 losses in the Big 12, and depending on what happens the rest of the way with BYU, we could be looking at a holy war in a championship game for the first time since the Mountain West Conference. And that was a de facto championship game, right? Because it was at the end of the season. So it'll be good. It'll be good. We'll see. We'll have to see what happens there. But it was a fun game. Utah showed up and showed out. It took them a little while to get going, but once Utah got going, Cincinnati had no answers. And that quarterback for Cincinnati was throwing temper tantrums left and right. And Morgan Scalley and Kyle Whittingham, I know, loved seeing that sort of body language as that kid went to the sideline. And head coach Scott Satterfield had no answers. He wasn't able to calm his kids down. He wasn't able to do anything. So they outcoached, outplayed, outhit Cincinnati at every angle. And Cincinnati should not be ranked. Utah should be. Cincinnati shouldn't be. And that's where we're at. So Utah wins going away 45-14. The game was kind of close in the first quarter. After that first quarter, Utah blew it open, and Cincinnati just couldn't do anything. Fun game. It really was. It was a really fun game. All right, so that's pretty much it for the football as far as like reviews go, because Utah State and BYU were both on bye weeks. Great weeks to have bye weeks for both teams. Both teams have some injuries. And BYU has the biggest game of the season in the Big 12 coming up. Outside of the Holy War, it's the biggest game in the Big 12 of the season. So BYU heads to Texas Tech. It is a 10 a.m. kickoff for us here in the state of Utah on ABC. Texas Tech surprised Utah with that 10 a.m. kickoff. Will Kalani Sitake and company have their team ready to go for that early kickoff? I don't know. BYU has been slow starters this entire season. Outside of those games against Portland State and Stanford, slow starters. Against Colorado, slow. West Virginia was pretty fast. Arizona was fast, but then the delay happened and they were slow rolling again. Utah, that was just a slugfest. You can't really count that game when you're looking at trends. And Iowa State, It took BYU until the second half to get going in that one, and that was an afternoon kickoff. So that's what worries me about the BYU-Texas Tech game. What else worries me is that Baron Morton will be playing for Texas Tech. He's not injured, and they are a very different team with him at quarterback rather than their backup. BYU's defense is legitimate. BYU's defense has this week to heal up a little bit. I have confidence in defensive coordinator Jay Hill. This game's going to be a slugfest. I really do think that. Texas Tech loves to run the ball. People don't think they do, but Texas Tech loves to run the ball. It's the old adage in football where you run the ball to throw it, and Texas Tech does that very well. It's a variant of a run and shoot offense, and that they run it very well. So if BYU can manage to get this victory, I do not see them losing another game the rest of the way. They'll be at home against TCU. They will have to travel to Cincinnati, but Utah just gave the blueprint to everybody on how to beat Cincinnati, and I don't see them being able to pivot very well to cover up what Utah exposed with them. And then Central Florida is a mess. It's the first year under Scott Frost. It's a rebuilding project, and Central Florida is traveling cross country to Provo. That one's a win. Just chalk it up. So this is the season right now for BYU against Texas Tech. It was the season before a couple weeks ago against Utah. It's the season again against Texas Tech. If BYU wins this one, that's a massive favor for Utah because that drops Texas Tech to 2 losses in conference. And then BYU against Cincinnati, Utah's going to have to root for BYU in that one as well because that would drop Cincinnati to 2 losses in conference if Cincinnati beats whoever is on their schedule, which I think is Kansas before the BYU game. So not necessarily that difficult for them. It's going to be a fun few weeks for BYU and Utah as we head down the stretch. Really fun. And to add more fun to it, you all know it, I love chaos when it comes to the top 25. I love to see every team in the top 25 lose just because I don't think the sports writers know as much as they think they know. And so the AP poll, it's just a talking point. It's garbage. The College Football Playoff Committee supposedly is not going to be taking into account anything from either the coaches poll or the AP poll. So that is another thing to kind of look at when the rankings get released on Tuesday evening for the inaugural College Football Playoff rankings for this season. We'll see what happens there. But if you look at the teams in front of BYU, who played? Ohio State and Indiana, probably 2 of the best 3 teams in the country right now. They looked like it. 38-14 Ohio State over Penn State. Penn State is a dumpster fire. Indiana 55-10 over Maryland. Those are 2 usually basketball schools, but Indiana's a football school now apparently. Georgia looked awful against Florida. They escaped with a win. Ole Miss was in a dogfight with South Carolina, who cannot generate offense. A little fun nugget for you if you want to look impressive to your friends is South Carolina is the only team in the country this season to not accrue 350 yards of total offense in any game. That's a fun stat. If you want to look smart, there you go. And Ole Miss struggled with them through 3 quarters. To give you an idea, it was 20-14 heading into the 4th quarter. So Ole Miss did not look good. They were 7th ranked. Georgia Tech lost on the road to North Carolina State. North Carolina State was 4-4 heading into this game. And Georgia Tech lost by 12. Vanderbilt, the baseball school, sometimes basketball school, only in the SEC to help the conference with their grades, really. Lost to Texas on the road, 34-31. It was a blowout heading into the 4th quarter, and then Diego Pavia tried to do heroics to get the team back, to get Vanderbilt back within striking distance, but they couldn't close the gap. So Texas, with 2 losses, beats Vanderbilt. So Vanderbilt was 9th, and then Miami. Miami is such a conundrum, and it's so weird because they have all the talent in the world. They supposedly have a really good head coach in Mario Cristobal, who is also an alumni of the University of Miami. And they lose on the road to an SMU team that has had trouble treading water this season with Kevin Jennings at quarterback. Before the season began, the quarterback at SMU was favored to be a Heisman candidate. SMU now sits at 6-3, 4-1 in the ACC. Miami is in danger of not even making the ACC title game. And they were sitting 10th. They got as high as 2nd in the AP poll. So that shows you how little the sports writers actually know about the current landscape of football, of college football. Notre Dame going into the half against Boston College, a Boston College team that has one win on the season. They were only up 12-7 at halftime. The final score for the game was 25-10. So not even Notre Dame, who is 2 slots behind BYU, looked any good. Texas Tech took care of business, destroyed Kansas State, although that one as well at the half was 12-7. Texas Tech even trailed at one point in the game. So nobody's looking invincible is what I'm saying. Virginia, who is right behind BYU. Like, what is this timeline? Indiana, Vanderbilt, Virginia, Georgia Tech, all these, Texas Tech, all these teams ranked in the top 15. Are you kidding me? This is awesome. I love it. Virginia goes on the road across the country, literally, to California and wins that one 31-21. At one point, however, it was just 24-14. Louisville only won by 12 against the Virginia Tech team that has 3 wins on the season. Michigan almost loses to Purdue 21-16. Houston, who was another darling of the media this season for the Big 12, loses at home to West Virginia, the same West Virginia team that got blown out by Utah and BYU. And people were thinking Houston could get to the Big 12 title game. And then USC goes on the road and barely beats a Nebraska team that is 6-2. So there's only 3, I think, pseudo-invincible teams in the country. Ohio State, obviously, talent to burn. They are as close to an NFL team as we've got this year. Indiana, they're tough to read for me because they have a very easy schedule in the Big Ten. Very easy. But they're just taking care of business. You can only play who's on your schedule. And they're doing it, and they're beating people by a ton of points. And then the other one is Georgia. Georgia looked human in a couple of games this year, but they still won. So they still have that, and this is such a cliched thing to say in sports talk, but they have that heart of the champion. They're not going to go away if they're down by 7 or 10 points. They still think they can win the game. So those are the 3 teams that I think are locks for the college football playoff. I don't trust Alabama and Kalen DeBoer at all. I don't trust anybody from the ACC. In fact, the ACC, their top 2 teams lost. Georgia Tech and Miami. So now their best team, the best team in the ACC, get ready. The highest ranked team from that conference is going to be Virginia. Yeah. What? What is this timeline? Virginia and Louisville, and this isn't basketball. This is still college football. I haven't switched it over to college basketball yet. Virginia and Louisville look like they are on a collision course for the ACC championship game. This timeline's awesome. I love it. Are you kidding me? Teams like Clemson. Clemson's in danger of not even making a bowl this year. Cade Klubnik was the favorite. Lest we forget, the quarterback at Clemson, Cade Klubnik, was the favorite to win the Heisman this year. Yes, he was. His team has 4 wins and is in danger of not making a bowl game, let alone the ACC championship or the college football playoff. Florida State, who beat Alabama earlier this year, still, I think, has 1 conference win in the ACC, if that many. So these teams that the media fawn over, yeah, Florida State had their first win in conference play against, wait for it, Wake Forest, who, by the way, has a winning record, 5-3. I love it. I love this timeline. Clemson lost to Duke at home. If you told me that was going to happen even 3 years ago, I would have said you were insane and you need to see a doctor. Well, here we are 3 years later. Duke wins it. Duke is 4-1 in the ACC. So it's Duke, Louisville, and Virginia at the top of the ACC with SMU. This is not basketball. This is football. And this is so much fun. So if we look, the reason why I bring all of these scores up and all of these different teams up is that in front of BYU, a lot of teams fell and a lot of teams did not look good. But because these programs have that name, right? Georgia's not moving anywhere. They're going to sit firmly at number 5 in the AP poll. BYU could move up as high as 6th without having played because of the carnage in front of them. Number 6. That's higher than last year. And that's with a true freshman quarterback, 19-year-old Bear Bachmeier. Everybody wrote BYU off, myself included. I'm not saying I'm better than everybody else. BYU has matched pretty much my preseason prediction in wins at 8. I said their ceiling was 8 wins with a true freshman quarterback. They were going to struggle against teams like Iowa State and Utah. They struggled in both games, but they came out on top. So the team around Bear Bachmeier is a lot better than I gave them credit for. And I'm going to eat crow on that one. Even if BYU loses every game the rest of the year, which I don't think they will have matched my preseason best case scenario prediction at 8 wins. That's a successful year any way you slice it. So no matter what happens with this team, what I want to remind Cougar fans, because what's going to happen or what could happen here is the team could lose out. It's entirely possible. Anything is possible in today's college football, except for Ohio State losing, I guess. So anything's possible in these next 4 weeks. BYU could get blown out by Texas Tech. They could lose at home to TCU. They could lose on the road to Cincinnati and at home to UCF. That could happen. It's still a successful season. A lot of fans are going to get caught up in the here and now and say, we need to fire Kalani Sitake. Sound familiar, Utah fans, after the Holy War? A lot of you were calling for Coach Whittingham to get fired. How stupid would that decision have been? Look at how the team has played the last 2 weeks. Kalani Sitake is the man for the job no matter what happens. You're not going to get anybody better. You're not. There isn't anybody better out there to get for BYU, and they know that. So no matter what happens, this season's a success. Remember that. Remember that BYU is in the national conversation. All of us would have killed for that sort of recognition pre-COVID. When BYU was an independent, they were only able to schedule 4 or 5 power conference opponents. In fact, some of those opponents were buying out that contract because BYU was not a part of a conference, and so that game didn't look as good. So BYU has gone from playing teams like Western Kentucky and Georgia State to teams like the University of Utah again, teams like Cincinnati, Texas Tech that have been ranked. You would have killed for this 5-6 years ago. So no matter what happens, successful season for BYU. I would dare say a successful season for Utah. Utah's bowl eligible. Remember, last year that didn't happen. Utah's sitting at 7-2. They're going to leap in the rankings this week because of back-to-back just dismantlings of teams. In fact, if you want a combined score of the last, oh my goodness, here's some scores for you, okay? If you rule out the Texas Tech and BYU game, the 2 losses, and one of those losses was by only 3 points on the road to a top 10 team, Utah has beaten West Virginia 48-14, Arizona State 42-10, Colorado 53-7, and Cincinnati 45-14. In fact, before that, they beat UCLA, the team that got James Franklin fired, 43-10 to start the year, and against Wyoming 31-6. Wyoming is in the thick of it for the Mountain West. This is a successful year for both teams. No matter what happens the rest of the way, the goals are the moon for both teams. But no matter what happens, just remember, this is a successful year. and the national media is paying attention to what's happening in Utah. And it's more than just a feel-good story. So that was a different tangent I wasn't expecting to go on, but I go where the wind takes me, and that's where it took me there. So just remember, no matter what happens for the last quarter of the season, it's a successful year for both teams. All right, so let's move it right along here into men's college basketball, as most people call it. I almost called it college men's basketball. And let's talk about the University of Utah first. It's not going to be a good year. It's a transition year. You have your coach. You do. And I think he's going to do a wonderful job, but it's going to take time. It's not going to be a one-year turnaround. And I know I said this when Kevin Young was hired. I said the same thing about BYU, but Coach Jensen, he is the guy for the job. He comes from the University of Utah. He has ties to the NBA. He has coached some of the best players in the NBA. Utah will get there. They will. And the boosters and everybody else, there's a bigger dedication to returning Utah back to the Rick Majerus days than there has been in a very long time. So this year, it's going to be rough. It is. Towards the bottom of the Big 12, maybe an NIT invite is possible. We'll have to see, though. I mean, the NIT has become just like the opt-out tournament. Like, schools are so unhappy that they didn't make the big dance that they just turned down the NIT because they see it as a consolation prize and they just don't want to deal with it. So we'll see what happens there. It's very, very, very possible Utah can make that, because the teams around them on that sort of like echelon of the Big 12, Colorado, Arizona State, Oklahoma State, Central Florida, and Cincinnati, none of those teams are any good. Even Kansas State and TCU, I don't think are going to be very good either. So there is a morass down at the bottom that I think Utah can claw its way out of. But it'll be very interesting to see how they're able to do that. So that's kind of your preview for the men's basketball team. Let's look at Utah State men's basketball, who somehow always manages to win up there in Logan. They finished third last year in the Mountain West, just 2 games back of New Mexico, who had a slew of transfers leave the program. Utah State was able to keep the majority of their roster intact. They were able to keep their head coach, which I don't know how they did that. And so I'm thinking Utah State is going to make the big dance this year again, and they're going to challenge for the Mountain West crown. I think Colorado State kind of came out of nowhere last year to overtake Utah State, but Utah State is at the top there. It's them, it's New Mexico still, it's UNLV up in that top 3 of the Mountain West. So I think Utah State has a very real shot at winning the Mountain West and getting that automatic bid into March Madness. So it could be a very good year for Utah State as well. And now for the one that everybody's paying attention to. BYU. AJ DeBensa, Richie Saunders, Rob Wright, Kebakita, Kevin Young, right? This team is loaded. It's loaded in a way BYU has never been in the past. They've had the 1 year or 2 year runs of, Danny Ainge from way back in the day, or Jimmer Fredette, even the year of Yoeli Childs, 2020. I think BYU could have made a very deep run that year if COVID didn't cancel everything. This year's different. This year, the team itself has sights set on the Final Four. That's not the fans. That's not the national media. That's the team itself. That is their goal. They did beat North Carolina in Salt Lake City at that exhibition. Again, it was an exhibition game, and I also want to keep reminding everybody that while North Carolina is a big name, they are not who they once were. They're just not. And so while it is an impressive headline to show that BYU beat North Carolina, it's not your North Carolina of old. It's not Raymond Felton and Sean May or Tyler Hansbrough or even Vince Carter and Anton Jameson. This is Herbert Davis's North Carolina, who can't seem to hang on to recruits. So, very good win. They tip off the season Monday night against Villanova, who also is not the Villanova of old, but it's still a marquee name that BYU was able to get on the schedule. Other marquee names that BYU was able to pull in their non-conference, University of Connecticut, national title contender, Final Four favorite. Dan Hurley, one of the premier coaches in the country, and they're going to be playing that game in Boston. So it's a de facto home game for the Huskies. They will also be playing against Wisconsin, top 25, preseason top 25 team, a Big Ten favorite. University of Miami, Clemson, even Pacific. So there are some names in this, you can call it preseason schedule, you can call it non-conference, whatever you want to call it. BYU is going to be battle tested before they even hit conference play. And then in conference play, they get a little introduction into conference play that's a little soft. It's Kansas State and it's Arizona State. And then it's the Holy War. It's at Utah. But then it's TCU and then Texas Tech on the road in Lubbock. And then right after that, they have to come home and play Utah. So what I'm trying to get across to everyone is not only has BYU never had a roster like this before, they've also never had expectations like this before, and they've never played a schedule like this before. I made a post on my Facebook saying what's more likely, BYU having more wins than the Utah Jazz. Is that likely? I think so. I think this BYU team, if they stay healthy, can win 30 games. Yeah, I think they can. The bottom of the Big 12 is pretty bad. And if they can win these games against Villanova, I don't even think they can win against Connecticut, but I want them to be competitive, and I think they will be. And it'll be their fourth game into the season, so they won't be as fresh and kind of loosey-goosey as they would be against a team like Villanova or Holy Cross. So this season is going to be a special season down in Provo. It'll be fun to watch for sure. AJ DeBanza is the real deal. He put up 30 against North Carolina in an exhibition game when he could have just turned it off and be like, I'm just saving it for the regular season. He didn't. Richie Saunders can shoot the clock out, and Rob Wright is an excellent point guard. And then not to mention Kebakita, who locks it down on the inside. And then there's a whole slew, there's a cast of characters behind that big four. So this team, I think, is going to go far. Do I think they're Final Four? I know they're Elite Eight. I don't know if they're Final Four. We'll see as the season goes along. All right, I was going to cover the Utah Mammoth a little bit, but suffice it to say, I'm very happy that they signed Logan Cooley to that big deal. Something that was written about in both ESPN and The Athletic was that deal was actually verbally agreed to before the road trip. And so Logan Cooley was able to play freely, knowing that he has his future set. He's locked in, he's with Utah for the long haul, and he played free. And that's the Logan Cooley we got. So that's something I wanted to bring up to you all as we close out this episode. Thank you all so much for being here, and I will see you all next week when we spelunk back into the Matt Cave.